Now let us talk about the money coming in, because eventually we have to. On a contract broiler operation, which is the most common entry point for new growers in the United States, the economics work differently from what most people expect. Under this model, you as the grower provide the land, the buildings, the utilities, and the labor. The integrating company, the processor, like Tyson or Purdue or Pilgrims, provides the chicks, the feed, the veterinary support, and the technical oversight. They own the birds. You raise them. In return, you receive a payment based on how many square feet of housing you have and how well your flock performs compared to other growers in your region. This is called a tournament payment system. The base pay per square foot per year for contract broiler growers in the United States typically falls in a range that translates to roughly $250,000 to $300,000 in gross annual revenue for a four-house complex of around 80,000 square feet, when all bonuses and adjustments are included.
That number sounds decent until you look at what comes out of it. Electricity and propane together run $48,000 annually on average. Labor, typically the owner-operator, plus occasional part-time help for cleanouts between flocks, runs around $32,000. Maintenance, repairs, and biosecurity supplies add $20,000. Insurance and administrative costs add $15,000. Total annual operating expenses, roughly $115,000. That leaves you with operating profit of approximately $175,000 before you touch your debt. And here is the structural reality that the brochures never lead with. To build that four-house complex, you borrowed somewhere between $1.2 million and $1.5 million from a lender. At a 15-year amortization on a farm loan, your annual debt payments, principal plus interest, run around $110,000. After debt service, you have roughly $65,000 left. Out of that, you need to set aside around $20,000 per year as a capital replacement reserve because equipment wears out, fans fail, feeding systems need overhaul, and the integrating company will eventually require housing upgrades to renew your contract. That leaves the owner of a $1.5 million facility working 7 days a week, netting around $45,000 in a good year. USDA Economic Research Service data confirms this range. Median net farm income for U.S. broiler operators runs from $38,000 for smaller operations to around $107,000 for very large facilities. That is not poverty, but it is not the passive income story that poultry farming is sometimes sold as. The facility debt is the dominant fact of financial life for a contract broiler grower. Every year for 15 years, $110,000 leaves before you pay yourself a single dollar. Independent layer farming offers the possibility of higher revenue, but it removes the safety net entirely.
A layer operation running 60,000 hens produces roughly 55,000 dozens of eggs per week at peak production. At U.S. wholesale prices ranging from $1.20 to $2 per dozen in normal market conditions, that is between $66,000 and $110,000 per week in gross revenue, or $3.5 million to nearly $6 million annualized. Before those numbers excite you, consider that feed alone for 60,000 hens costs $900,000 to $1.2 million per year. A laying hen eats roughly 90 pounds of feed annually. Add housing debt, utilities, labor, and pullet replacement, and the net margin in egg production sits in a narrow band that can swing violently. In 2023, following the HPI outbreak that destroyed tens of millions of laying hens across the United States, wholesale egg prices surged to record highs, above $5 per dozen in some markets. Producers with birds in the ground made extraordinary profits, but when the national flock recovered, prices crashed back. Independent layer farmers who had taken on debt to rapidly expand during the high price window found themselves servicing that debt while prices collapsed. That is the volatility trap at the center of egg farming.
Feed inflation hits this business the same way. In 2022, corn prices hit 10-year highs following supply disruptions from the war in Ukraine, which is one of the world's largest grain exporters. Farmers who had not locked in feed prices through forward contracts watched their cost of production jump 15 to 20% while their egg prices lagged. Some absorbed the loss, some could not. Now, let us scale the numbers and see what actually changes. At 5,000 birds, your cost per bird is extremely high because all of your fixed overhead, land, housing, equipment, licensing, is spread across a tiny number of animals. You cannot get bulk feed pricing, you probably cannot afford automation. Some operators find niche direct-to-consumer markets at this scale, but competing in wholesale channels below 20,000 birds is nearly impossible on price. At 20,000 birds, you start accessing automated feeding and watering systems that reduce labor meaningfully. Feed pricing improves, but the debt burden is still large relative to revenue, and one disease event hits you proportionally harder because there are no other houses generating cash to offset it.
At 100,000 birds and beyond, fixed costs per bird drop sharply. You earn the best feed pricing because you are buying hundreds of metric tons at once. Automation pays for itself quickly, but your biosecurity exposure becomes existential. One pathogen introduced into a 100,000 bird complex can spread across all houses before you even confirm the diagnosis. The concentration that makes the economics work is the same concentration that makes the biological risk catastrophic. The operators who have actually built wealth in this business share a few common traits. They treat biosecurity as seriously as financials. They track feed conversion, water consumption, and daily weight gain obsessively against benchmarks. They diversify where they can. Selling poultry manure as fertilizer converts a waste disposal problem into a secondary revenue stream. And they hedge against the things outside their control through contract structures, forward feed pricing, and insurance. Technology is changing the cost structure in measurable ways.
Modern sensors placed throughout chicken houses continuously monitor temperature, humidity, ammonia, and carbon dioxide. Automated controllers adjust fan speeds and air inlets in real time. AI camera systems flag early signs of lameness or respiratory distress before symptoms are visible to the human eye. A full digital monitoring packet for a 4-house complex runs $30,000 to $60,000, but farms running these systems consistently report lower mortality and better feed conversion because problems get caught earlier and environmental conditions are held tighter. The upfront cost pays for itself. Before we wrap up, if you want to go deeper on building and running a business, not just poultry, but the fundamentals that apply across industries, check out the detailed business guide linked in the description and pinned in the first comment. It breaks down business thinking in a way it's practical and easy to apply. So, let us run the two scenarios honestly.
In the optimistic scenario, you build a 4-house contract broiler complex in the southern United States, borrowing $1.3 million at a reasonable interest rate on a 15-year loan. You hit your performance targets in the tournament system consistently. Your annual gross revenue comes in at $290,000. Your operating expenses run $115,000. Your debt service is $110,000. Your capital reserve is $20,000. You net $45,000 as the working owner of a $1.3 million facility. Over 15 years, assuming no major disease events and no major equipment failures, you service the debt, build equity in the facility, and have an asset worth something at the end of it. In the realistic scenario, one disease event in year 4 forces a flock loss and a 6-week cleanout period. The integrating company conducts an efficiency audit and notifies you that your housing needs an upgrade to maintain your contract, adding another $200,000 in borrowing. Feed prices spike the following year due to a drought in the Corn Belt, and your utility bills jump because of a hotter than average summer. In that year, your net income goes negative.
You are covering the gap from savings or from your spouse's income. Some operators in this scenario survive it. Others sell the farm. The difference between a good year and a bad year for a mid-scale broiler operation can easily be $100,000 or more. That is the number that defines this business. A poultry farm is not a place where chickens grow. It is a biological factory running on narrow margins, exposed to commodity markets it cannot control, dependent on climate systems that cannot fail, and living in permanent proximity to pathogens that do not negotiate. The farmers who build real wealth from it are not the ones who were lucky. They are the ones who understood exactly what they were getting into, the costs, the risks, the daily discipline required, and built systems that gave them a fighting chance when things went wrong. Because in this business,
At some point, things always go wrong. The question is whether you built your operation to survive it. If you found this video valuable, please like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It means a great deal and helps us keep making content like this. Thanks for watching.